I must have been 6 or 7 when I lived in Lenabon. The country was ravaged by war at the time. Murders were common and frequent. I remember during a particular vicious era when the bombings rarely stopped, I would stay at home sitting in front of my television watching a very strange show. It was a kids show that lasted about 30 minutes and contained strange and sinister images. To this day, I still believe it was a thinly veiled attempt on this part of the media to use scare tactics to keep kids in place, because the moral of every episode revolved around very uptight ideologies, stuff like bad kids stay up late, bad kids have their hands under their covers when they sleep, and bad kids steal food from the fridge at night. It was very weird, and in Arabic to top it off. I didn't understand much of it, but for the most part, the images were very graphic and comprehensive. The thing that stuck with me the most, however, was the closing scene. It remained much the same in every episode. The camera would zoom in on an old, rusted, and closed door. As it got closer, strange and sometimes even agonizing screams would become more audible. It was extremely frightening, especially for children's programming at the time. Then a text would appear on the screen in Arabic reading, "That's where the bad kids go." Eventually, both the image and the sound would fade out, and that would be the end of the episode. About 15 or 16 years later, I became a journalist photographer. That show had been in my mind all my life, popping up in my thoughts sporadically. Eventually, I've had enough and I decided to do some research. I finally managed to uncover the location of the studio where much of that channel's programming had been recorded. Upon further research and eventually traveling on site, I found out it was now desolate and had been abandoned after the big war ended. I entered the building with my camera. It was burnt out from the inside. Either a fire had broken out or someone wanted to incinerate all of the wooden furniture. After a few hours, cautiously making my way into the studio and snapping some pictures, I found an isolated, out-of-the-way room. After having to break through a few old logs and managed to break the heavy door open, I remained frozen in the doorway for several long minutes. Traces of blood, feces, and tiny bone fragments lay scattered across the floor. It was a small room, an extremely morbid scene. What truly frightened me, though, was made me turn away and never want to come back, was the bottled cage microphone hanging from the ceiling in the middle of the room. Well, once again, another old classic, and a good one, I might add. Honestly, this story is really good and pretty short, which is a problem that I have with the story, but we'll get into that. But the main thing that I like about this story is that it sort of ties into that, childhood fear that everyone had as growing up, where if you did, something bad, there was a punishment, like, oh, if you misbehave, the witch is going to come after you, or in my case, La Llorona is going to come after you. And I like how this story sort of plays into that little fear, where in this TV show in a foreign country, mind you, a country that's, not in America, so that's another unique thing, where it's in a foreign country that's happening during a war, and of course, whenever a war happens, there's a lot of propaganda, fear mongering, a lot of that stuff happening, and in this program it's made in its time frame. It makes sense that a show like this would exist. And another thing that I like about this story is that this show haunted our main protagonist into the adulthood. I mean, he has a job, I think it's a photographer journalist or something like that, where he basically takes pictures of, war events and just tragedies, basically. And this sort of, is one of the ramifications that the show did to him. And I like how towards the end, he discovers the studio of where the show was made from. And sure enough, the show wasn't lying. They did murder kids live on TV, and nobody did a thing. Nobody really ever rescued them. And I like how he describes the studio as if it burnt down, and there's potential for a sequel right there. Maybe it could be explained that one of the kids or a group of kids, fought back against the kidnappers or the people who made this the show, and they decided to burn them down along with everyone in it. There's a lot of potential for this. We could get stories of other people who have seen this show, or people who have survived being on the show. And also, it begs the question, Was it, like, this is taking place in a war setting, were they prisoners of the enemy, or did they use their own people? There's a lot of potential and a lot of imagination in this story, or left to the imagination, I should say, about this story. But yeah, it's a really short one, but a good one at that, and there's a reason why a lot of people remember it. And with that being said, I recommend checking out this story. It's pretty decent. It's a nice little short story. And well, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Kind of short video, but need to get something out there. So I decided, why not read this story? Anyways, don't forget to check out all my other social medias. And with that being said, I am out.